Hola a todos y a todas desde Filadelfia.
Hola, hola Carol. Gracias por invitarnos a participar en esta charla.
My name is Catherine Box, and I'm one of the English language specialists who participates in our wonderful partnership with UCN on the EMI project.
And I'm Ann Pomerantz. I'm Catherine's colleague at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, and we are delighted to share with you some details about our work at UCN this summer. So up here on the screen is our presentation.
Yes. So what we worked on this past winter in Antofagasta and in Coquimbo is work on English medium instruction and having UCN incorporate EMI into their course offerings across the campuses. So to begin with a definition of EMI, English medium instruction, is the teaching of a course in English at an institution where English is not the dominant language, and the course that is being taught is not specifically an English course. So as Roy Lister and his colleague defined it, non-linguistic curricular content such as geography or science or law or medicine is taught to students through the medium of a language, in this case English, that they are concurrently learning as an additional language. If you look at the research, there is quite a lot of evidence for the effectiveness of using EMI in higher education contexts. EMI is part of a broader approach to language learning and teaching called content-based instruction. And that includes approaches like CLIL that many people may have heard of, that is often used with younger students, where they are learning a language, in this case English, through a subject area, such as math or science. English medium instruction is the adaptation of that kind of content and language integrated approach for higher educational contexts, where they would take coursework in their area of specialization, but instead of having that coursework in their first or dominant language, in this case Spanish, they take it in English, where the goal of the course is still to master course content related to their specialization, but at the same time, they're able to build proficiency in English.
And so there are a lot of different potential disciplinary or learning outcomes for EMI. One is disciplinary competence, so learning an actual academic content area like biology or engineering. Participation in international academic contexts. Very often English is the lingua franca or shared language in academic spaces. It's also often the shared language in professional spaces. And so EMI can prepare students for participation in a global job market. And then, of course, there is additional language proficiency in English. When an institution decides to take up English medium instruction, it may look very different in different places. So in some institutions, EMI might just entail a change in language. So you're shifting from teaching, for example, in Spanish to in English. In other cases, and very often, it entails a shift both in language and in teaching style. So much of the work Catherine and I did at UCN during your winter months was really dedicated to thinking about different teaching approaches and how to support students for whom English may be an additional language. And a third iteration, or a third thing that might happen when you implement EMI, is there might be a change in language, a change in teaching style, and a change in your students. So sometimes EMI is also used as a way to attract international students to a university, and English is then used as the lingua franca for the classroom.
So we wanted to talk very briefly about what we did this past winter at UCN. This is part of an ongoing virtual project that I have been a part of since 2022. And it included a 7-week in-person course that happened from the end of June until about mid-August of 2023. So during the virtual project, I was helping the team at UCN recruit people that wanted to participate in the in-person course. And we were doing that through asking faculty to give demo lessons in English so that we could gauge their needs and their proficiency levels. And then also we developed a curriculum that would be implemented in the 7-week in-person course that was held both in Antofagasta and in Coquimbo. So I'll talk a little bit about the in-person part because it was the part that Anne and I worked on together. I was in Antofagasta, Anne was in Coquimbo, and we both had an approach to the course that was constructivist in nature. So rather than us delivering lectures, we did more of a process of discovery with the faculty that were participating in the project on how EMI could be used in their departments and in their courses. We did a lot of collaborative tasks where we were working together, both between the trainer and the participants and between the participants themselves. We did a lot of hands-on case studies and projects where we thought about how EMI will be applied in different contexts across UCN. And then we also had opportunities for reflection, both on the part of the participants as participants in the EMI course, and what it was like to be working in a sustained manner in English on something, on a project such as this, but also reflecting on their own pedagogy and how they would adapt for offering courses in English and how that might look in their classrooms.
And so our course objectives were fairly straightforward. By the end of the course, we really wanted participants to be able to describe the theoretical foundations of EMI, really understand what it is and what it isn't as a pedagogical approach. And then we spent quite a bit of time developing participants' ability to use an array of tools and strategies to implement EMI within their specific, both disciplinary context, so what is the subject that you teach? Who are you teaching? But also the institutional context. Are you working mostly with graduate students, undergraduate students? What level of English language proficiency can you expect in your class? And so we divided our work, our in-person work, into 8 modules. Foundations, we talked a bit about fostering academic literacy in English. So what does it mean to use English for academic purposes and professional purposes? We talked about setting language goals and how to support those goals. We put a big focus on what's called here comprehensible input and comprehensible output. Comprehensible input refers to how you, as the EMI instructor, make what you're saying or what students are reading accessible to them by supporting wherever they are linguistically in English. And comprehensible output, how do you structure your class to help students to develop their spoken and their written proficiency in English? Because we know that both receptive skills and productive skills matter in language acquisition. We talked a bit about assessment, about how do you assess content knowledge? How do you assess language knowledge in an EMI context? And finally, we talked a lot at the end of the course about what we had learned, what our next steps were, and where do we go from here.
So to talk a little bit about the outcomes of this project, which is ongoing, the final portion of it will be implemented in 2024, where we'll be doing a debrief and an evaluation with a training manual for future EMI instructors. But as I had mentioned, there's a significant virtual portion that included the recruitment of participants, the development of curriculum, and also talking about how to reach the community, the secondary community in Antofagasta in particular, and recruiting high school teachers to also participate in EMI. We had about 20 faculty at each site. My faculty or my participants were a mix of faculty from Antofagasta as well as secondary school teachers. I also conducted an intensive workshop at the end of the program for future EMI trainers with the English department at UCN Antofagasta. And of course, we also have an ongoing program evaluation and perhaps most importantly, a lifelong partnership between our work here in Philadelphia and in the United States and UCN, and perhaps more broadly in the region of Northern Chile, and maybe in the future throughout Chile.
So thank you all so much for listening. Un fuerte abrazo desde Filadelfia. Thank you. Y hasta entonces.
Gracias.
Gracias.
See you soon.